Hello and welcome to our 51st Help Save Our World online speakers meeting, where we're changing the conversation to change the world. I'm Dennis, the teacher of this quest for the truth, change, and transformation. Today, we're continuing with physics, the sciences, and technology, but trying to sort of get an understanding really of who we are in relation to this belief system and where they're discordant. And that might take a few weeks. So some of it might be more setup than anything else. So I just want to point out that I'm not just speaking because I can and that I'm trying to create disinformation as people are so incredibly good at in our world today. This is actually well thought out and well researched. I've spent my lifetime researching and reading, searching for the truth and the natural wisdom of life, nature, and the universe. I've studied marine engineering, which includes physics and mathematics and metallurgy and all sorts of things about materials, strengths, and properties, and many, many engineering subjects. And then I went on and I studied education and psychology and sociology and philosophy and religions and all sorts of other subjects relating to education. Doing marine engineering, I sailed to many places around the world, of course, which gives me an incredible background of cultures and understanding nature and oceans and seas and winds and waves and just an incredible background of knowledge and information. Then, of course, teaching. I taught electronics, electrical, and mechanical engineering, which is dealing with the fundamental principles of all of these subjects. So I have like this incredible breadth of knowledge as a basis to my education. But then, of course, I sailed as a captain all around the world to many places. So I then have this wealth of knowledge on actually living life. So I'm not just randomly coming up with craziness. You know, there is this relationship that we have with nature that's obviously perceivable around us. And then there is the construct of physics and sciences and everything. And there is like a disconnect. There's something that doesn't add up. And science is slowly catching up, but it's still not there. And this is what we're searching for. We're searching for what is it that's wrong about it that we need to change to create maybe a better field of study. Maybe it's not even called physics anymore, but a whole new way of thinking, which is based on reality as we see it as well. In these conversations, I've chosen not to get lost in the details of mathematics or the details of different theories. I will bring in critical theories that are important, but I won't get in too much depth into them because, you know, there are many books written about that. And if you want to do the research reading, you can, and then we can have a more in-depth conversation. But this is just basically for the layman, just so everyone like gets a good idea, and it's all based on the truth. So I won't lie to you. I won't get lost in the details of the theories, but to look at the underlying philosophies and to speak in simple language so everyone can understand the concepts and the ideas. I also use storytelling and thought journeys as simple ways to explain the truth. I hope this is helpful to you. You're welcome to look at whatever level you wish to, and of course, like we can set up separate Zoom meetings and we can discuss them. So I'm totally confident in my knowledge of many, many, many things. So let's start with our introductions. So Kurt, could you please introduce yourself?
Well, that's one thing I am confident about is that I know who I am and I can tell you where I'm at. So I'm here again to expand my knowledge and the possibilities of thought that come out of associating with this group, and with the like-minded direction of being a contribution to the betterment of the civilization that is living in this world right now.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Kurt. Alex, could you introduce yourself? Sound Alex?
That would help. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm here in South Africa, and yeah, we're speaking out for the people that don't have a voice, the animals, the trees, the life, the um, anything that doesn't have a voice, and saying help change the world, help grow, help sow, help everything, help all the animals and people and plants and life and ecosystems that are dying off because we're not making the best decisions going forward.
Thank you so much, Alex. So well put. It's really important to realize that each institution develops its own set of terms and words and so on. And eventually that whole way of the use of all those words and those theories develops into a language. So each institution has its own language, which is unique to them based on their sets of values and beliefs. And it's really hard for an outsider who doesn't have the knowledge and has not been schooled into that language to be able to really understand what's going on. So let's take a closer look at the values and beliefs of the sciences. Last week, we went through a few of these, but let's just go over them. There's things like objectivity. So it's not being an emotional observer of the situation, but to look at it and say, you know, this behaves like this as from an objectified point of view. This thing moves here and this does this and they bang together, then this is what happens. Totally separated from the actual mechanics or whatever's happening in that situation. Then there's materialism. So materialism is like this perception that we live in this physical world, like of all the rocks on the beach and whatever. So it's a way of looking at the world and as things in the universe as objects, as asteroids, as things. The next concept was labeling or naming things. You know, even if it is as simple as a letter like the ABC in vitamins or the periodic table with all of these letters and symbols and numbers and so on to describe a particular atom or the basic elements supposedly of this periodic table. So it's like graphs and charts and these tools are helpful, but what they do is they distract us from what they really are. Then of course you have grading, like for example, you break up the stones on that beach from big rocks and then they become smaller boulders, and then the boulders become stones, and the stones become sand, and the sand becomes powder. And that's like a grading and labeling and naming of things. And that takes away from the whole process, because if you went through that whole process of that whole storyline, first of all, you have this molten planet, and then the planet cools and igneous rock forms, like volcanic rock forms, and it eventually over, with the changing of the weather and the seasons and the ice ages and so on, and the rocks start to break up and get smaller and smaller. So first of all, it was molten as lava, this liquid rock. It's moving, it's flowing, it's giving off light and heat, and then it becomes hard, and then it becomes broken down over billions of years to produce the sand that's on this beach. And then if you really start to look at it, it's like you start to study geology and so on, and you see that you get different types of rock, which is all that sand now compressed together and produces like sandstone. And then all of these layers of rock get like squashed down deeper and deeper and deeper. And eventually some rock ends up being combined into the lava, which is under the crust of our planet, and comes shooting out as liquid rock again from a volcano or something. So I'm not saying that all the processes are identical, but what I am saying is there is this variance from liquid to rock to not to rock. And in between that, every single rock each day, as the temperature changes and as basically we can only see the rocks on this beach because of light that's entering them and light that's radiating outward, which we are perceiving as rock. I mean, the rock's not hitting our eye for us to see it. It's actually the energy that left the rock. And we think of our world as things when it's really our world is interacting with this energy flowing between the rocks and us. Then, because of our position spinning around the sun in what they refer to as the Goldilocks zone, it's like this ideal temperature range. We live on a pretty stable planet. Then, of course, life creates the oxygen in the atmosphere, which creates and of course the ozone, which is 3O, which is its oxygen combined together as molecules to produce ozone, and that acts as like a cooling blanket as well, which maintains a pretty sort of set temperature variance on our planet. And that's what brings us the balances, the stability of our planet. As you can see from Venus and Mercury are closer to the sun, so they're much hotter than what we are. And then we're in this ideal position. And then if you go further out to Mars, Mars is a much colder planet than ours. So it's not receiving as much heat energy from the sun. And as you go out further, you have all of these gas giants and all sorts of things, showing that as you get further out, things are less dense and less physical. So we have to understand that, like, we just exist in this optimal zone. So what we call rocks and so on is pretty much just where we are functioning on this balance of this journey around the sun. You know, if we got closer to the sun, eventually all of this would all melt, and the water would evaporate and the gases would disappear, and we would not live on this magical world. So this belief in things is just a belief based on what we are experiencing because of our particular situation. Then, of course, reductionism, the principle of if you break things down smaller and smaller, you'll eventually get down to atoms, which are supposedly the fundamental particles that everything is composed of. And we find that no, at that realm, atoms don't really exist as things. They are purely space with energy and vibrations spinning at the speed of light at those different energy levels. I'll get more into that a little bit later. Then we have disintegration. You know, it's like if we take our world and we think of it as separate things, and we look at the rock as a separate thing, and we look at a drop of water or a liter of water or a quart of water as a certain thing, and we quantify our world and we disintegrate it into things, then it's not our world. Our world is complex relationships, like the winds that blow over the ocean, and that creates the ripples, and the ripples become the waves, and those become the swells. And the swells have this incredible amount of energy that came from the heat of the sun, heating up different areas, either the land or the water, more than other areas. And of course, that created the gas flow, the actual flow of air, which creates the waves, ripples, creates the waves, and so on, the swells, and then the waves, and so on. And those all create these vibrations on this ocean. And then the waves eventually break onto the beach, and that energy is transmitted into the beach. All of this is happening, and they're processes, and it's in a huge ecosystem. And if it wasn't for that, then we would not be oxygenating the water and so on. And then all life depends on oxygenation and all of that sort of thing. So there's so many variables that are happening, but it's all happening as this composition. And when you break things apart, you lose the composition. You lose the ecosystems. You lose the whole environmental experience. It's like an ostrich sticking its head in the sand and observing this one grain of sand. You can learn so much about that grain of sand, but then you forget about the beach and life and sunshine and everything that's happening around you. So specialization is another one of those fundamental scientific problems. And then we have things like gravity. It's just a name given for an effect where objects are drawn towards one another, and it has specific things like this, the speed, like things fall at 10 meters per second, and all that sort of thing. It's just these relationships of how big and how far away they are divided by the square of the distance between them. That's like the formula for gravity and so on. But like Newton was able to do these scientific studies to be able to say, okay, well, this is how these things behave, but why and what is gravity was not explained by him. And even Einstein's explanation is just another theory, another explanation. But nobody can really tell you what gravity is. I mean, it could just be this force we call love, that draws two beings together. So, it just depends on how you observe it and what you think of it. And then quantum mechanics, dealing with quanta, with a certain amount of energy entering and leaving and so on. So there's quite a few more of these fundamental things. Yes, the next one that I wanted to bring up was that the sciences and mathematics have become inseparable languages. Both of them are tools, and these tools have basically become one because of the need for quantification and to prove things and to see trends and to see what's going on in our world. There has to be a method of quantification. But mathematics itself is a language. It's not the absolute truth, and it's based on generalization. If you think of a hurricane and it's spinning, we can say there is a mathematical relationship for a spiral called the Fibonacci sequence of numbers: 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, and so on. That describes a spiral, right? And we know that galaxies quite often spin in spiral formation. And we know that hurricanes do the same. And we know that tornadoes do the same. And then you can have a look at many different species of plant life, and they do the same. And then, of course, we can actually go onto this beach down here, and we can look at the shells, and you'll find many spiraling seashells. And then you have like a mathematical, numerical way of saying the relationship is on a two-dimensional plane, that the numbers increase in a certain ratio as they go out, as a sequence of numbers. And that's a generalization, because we know that none of these worldly things happen in two dimensions, in one plane. That basically the sun shines, the oceans get warm, and then the hot air rises, creating convection and moisture, and then you have the spin of the planet and the drag, basically, as it's spinning close to the equator, because hurricanes only really develop like really strong in that sort of region. And then all of these gases that are rising and spinning and turning together eventually form into this general sweeping arms of this hurricane. And of course, depending on the amount of moisture in the air, whether it's dry and whether it's not, how the hurricane forms is really sort of like this wishy-washy thing. It's sometimes it generates into these incredibly powerful and well-defined hurricanes with this huge eye center and eye walls and so on. And it's quite incredible to observe from the top. But what's going on in the whole process of the movement up and the spinning, and you could never describe that with one single plane, two-dimensional description of what's happening. So mathematics in that sense is a generalization. And that mathematical model, although extremely interesting and useful, can be generally applied to a shell and generally applied to the plants that create these spiraling growth formations and so on and so on. But in reality, the mathematical model is a generalization. It's like an oversimplification of reality. So we've got to be careful of that. Like even the unit one, which I've explained before, is like everything in the universe is unique. It's like snowflakes, like fingerprints, like hair follicles, like everything. Although they're very similar and there are generally similar patterns of what is created, there is like nowhere in the universe that you have anything that is identical to the next thing. They can be very, very, very similar. Even if we try and reproduce them as perfectly the same, they're not the same. They, and if you take it down to a subatomic level, they're not made with the same atoms, and they're not made with the same energy, and they're not made with the same space. And so you can really get down to how they are dissimilar. But if you pick up two of them and you put them next to one another, the way the light radiates off them, and you know whether the one has a blemish on it or the other, you can see that everything is unique. So we believe that we live in a world where we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those are 1, 3, 2, 3. And ultimately, you can't do that, because then the moment you do that, you've stepped away from reality, and now you're in a disintegrating, objectifying, disconnected way of perceiving the world. So although helpful tools, they're not the absolute truth. Then, of course, fractals is the same thing. You know, it's like we can generalize and say that one level of reality is similar to another level of reality, but ultimately, nothing is absolutely perfect reproduction of the previous level. That's a generalization. Alex, do you have any ideas there?
Dad,
All of
just
the
so you,
Yeah.
sorry, I am here, I am listening. Get the unmute button just now. But
Okay.
yeah, I am around, but I am listening in.
Good, good. So do you have any anything to say about some of the ideas that I put out there?
I've pretty much said most of that stuff before on those ideas, and yes, singularity and um, you know, uh, quantifying an item to be a single digit or a unit of, and not seeing the bigger picture is our problem um, with these subjects and these tools that we use. And I have mentioned that a few times, that it is a big issue, and it is definitely something that we need to look at. We need to be able to quantify, well, not even quantify, we shouldn't even quantify the whole. And, it can't just be an ecosystem, because an ecosystem, the word doesn't connect you with the environment unless you've ever been in that environment, ever had the dirt under your feet, dug into the humus soil, been involved in the growing and the cultivating of those ecosystems. If you haven't been there looking under the microscope at the different microbacteria in the soils in those ecosystems, then you cannot fully connect with the word ecosystem. You cannot fully connect with and quantify that feeling and that experience and that warmth and that growth and the love and the connectivity of that environment if you've never been in it. So we cannot quantify um, or um, or singular an item, create an item into a unit without feeling, without losing the compassion and the love and the feeling towards it all.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's like it's in the living and the experiencing and the doing and the feeling and the subjective interpretation. It's like, what am I feeling now? I'm feeling the sunlight on my skin. I can feel the cool breeze on the hairs of my arm. You know, it's all of these sort of unknown or quantities that, like, we are on video now, and it's disconnected. It really is not living. And I think that what you brought up there is brilliant, because mathematics and science is like, it's like getting inside your head, which is extremely helpful, all right, in many situations. But being inside your head is not living. You know, how do you feel when you're out there swimming in the ocean and your chest is burning and you're breathing and your arms are burning because you're having to
Yeah.
swim, because there's like this incredibly big wave going to break down on you, break on you, and you might not survive. Like all
Yeah,
of
it's
that.
waves, it's water, it's set, but it does not explain the feeling, the experience. It doesn't, it's not a substitute for the experience and the connectivity of the experience.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, so I've been doing here is I've been going through this whole section very, very sort of briefly touching at different things. But what I would like to bring up is there are different actual theories that prove what we're saying is valid and true. And first of all, I want to look at light. Now, when I studied Newtonian physics and everything, we looked at light in many different ways. Like, first of all, light traveling through like space is behaves like waves, like these electromagnetic vibrations, like flying through space, and they fly. The speed at which the information is transmitted really is, it's incredibly fast, 300 uh, million meters per second, as opposed to 186,000 miles per second. So it's this incredible speed at which these vibrations are happening and transmitting through space. Now, um, the really interesting thing is when you're diving in the ocean and you are on the surface and the reef is shallow just beneath the water, you can see all of these beautiful, absolutely magnificent colors. But as the reef gets deeper and deeper under the water and you dive down, you see less and less of the colors. So there is this absorption of light frequencies into the ocean all day. I mean, it's happening. So it's a realization that there is this connection between um, light and the creation of our planet. Now, if you go and you look at E equals mc squared, Einstein proves that basically the square of light combining together at the speed of light um, is what forms mass. So energy and mass are interchangeable. So the realization is that everything that exists is formed by the combinations of these different frequencies of electromagnetic vibrations of space combining to form mass. And with the atomic bomb, what they do is they reverse that process, is they release the energy of atoms and create this incredible expansion of energy, which can be devastating. So then that concept of light, which is really fascinating, is when Newton is doing his experimentation, he takes a glass prism, which is like a triangle, but it's thick, all right? And he passes a light through the prism. And as it enters the prism, it starts to disperse the light and spread it out into the different colors of the light spectrum. So white light is made of many frequencies, which form what we call our light spectrum, which is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and indigo and violet. Seven actual main colors. And when combined together, which Newton does with his little spinning disc, proves that um, all of these colors combined together makes white light. But going through the prism, it comes out on the other side as these spread out different um, colors of light. Now that's fascinating because First of all, on the simple level of light is passing through rock. I mean, think about that. I mean, if it's basically like silica, it's basically like the sandstone on the beach, which has been heated up and melted, and of course, all the impurities taken out, and now it's glass. All right. So now you're passing light through rock, and it splits up the light into all of these different frequencies. I mean, isn't that fascinating? Um, then the next really interesting thing is the here we are. We're like on our planet, and it's dark outside, and we look out at the stars across the universe, and there are these blinking stars, and this what that is literally this ray, this light energy, which has been expanding out from the star in all different directions in space. All right. And we are like standing on this planet so far away, and we receiving almost in a straight line perception. Of course, there are things that can slightly bend that, but it generally, which is like big masses and so on, can bend the actual light rays, but like waves around a point or something. But generally, it's come straight through space for enormous periods of time, and we are receiving it's hitting our retina, and we are able to see these stars and galaxies on the other side of the universe, like really, well, not other side because we don't know how far that is, but this immense distance out there. So the interesting thing is light is passing through other light, which is traveling in all different directions. We have all of this light coming from all of these stars and all traveling in all different directions. And they flow through one another, just like ripples in a pond. You drop one droplet of water, yeah, one droplet of water. There you have these radiant concentric circles, like radiating out from those droplets. And they literally cross over one another without friction and continue on their journey. Now, you have the same thing because um, space is not made of matter. It's made of this electromagnetic vibrating medium. So without any resistance, this light is passing in all different directions across the galaxies, across the universe. And so there is no particular source. There are many sources, and everything changes because energy cannot be created nor destroyed, can only change its state of expression. So energy combining together with E equals mc squared, forming the mass, which is like atoms, which together combine to form physical matter, planet or whatever, or gaseous supergiant, combines together to form mass, and then depending on the balances of that situation, can stay as that for a long period of time. But ultimately, it accumulates and accumulates and eventually grows to a point where it changes its situation or becomes a star and radiates energy out. So there's this like whole process of events happening over extremely long periods of time, which we as humans really are battle to comprehend because, but we can see it and we can prove that these things are happening by what us we've studied of the universe. So um, fascinating. And then, of course, you have collisions and coming together of whole galaxies and how they relate to one another. There's fascinating stuff being studied by the sciences, which is interesting. But so sometimes our tools are great, but they don't sort of, they in many ways, they have their limitations. So here we have light. I was just at a log fire last night, and these logs were burning and they were emitting this heat and this light. And you just stop and you think about that. It's like these plants, right throughout their lifetimes, through their leaves, have been sequestering carbon and releasing oxygen to create the atmosphere. But the most important thing that they're actually doing is they're capturing the heat and the light of the universe and turning it in, using that energy to grow into this living being. And we know that that's true because if you block the sunlight, and there's no other way of them getting their energy, then plants won't grow. They die. The majority do. the ones that rely on photosynthesis. Now, it's important to realize that we as living beings, you know, the sun shines, the plants grow, we eat the plants, we grow. So we are expressions of this energy which is flowing throughout the universe and from the sun and from the stars, and that energy is what we assimilate into our being. And it can be ultraviolet light, which is the radiant energy from the sun, but it's also what we eat in our fruits and our foods, that is literally being captured from the universe as we're spinning through space, and all of this radiant energy is coming in. So you can see mass and life forming because of the sunlight that's shining. And I mean, how did we lose that? That we're living on a growing planet. You can see that they've done, the American Navy has done studies of the ocean floor, and how at the in the deepest canyons of our ocean, the actual ocean floor, the crust, is very thin in relation to that on continents, and it progressively is breaking and reforming and breaking and reforming. All of this energy that's coming in is growing our planet. All right. Now it's incredible amounts of energy, and it's incredible amounts of time through which this process is happening, but it's happening. So we live on a growing planet. We live in sort of organically growing, and then of course all of those trees die and they fall on the ground, and then they become part of the the process of becoming rock, uh, and becoming the surface of the earth. And of course, that carbon that's trapped in the trees, and the energy is squished and squished, and eventually becomes coals and oils and gases and so on in the depths of the ocean, of the earth, underneath all of that enormous pressure. So everything is these processes which are happening and changing, and we're living in this incredibly dynamic world. I mean, just look at anything around you. Uh, Look at a flower, look at the tree, look at the table in front of you. You can only see that because of the energy that enters it and leaves it and hits your retina. So we're living in this incredible energy reality, and we're thinking of it as things. That makes no sense. It's not things, it's happening. So, Alex, I think we're reduced to the two of us. I don't know. Kurt wasn't able to make it back, it seems.
Yeah, no problem there.
So, what do you think of that?
That's awesome. I love the whole light thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's like if the one thing is called the photoelectric effect, where light waves enter a um, well, they Einstein and Max Planck were working together. Max Planck was doing studies on black body experiments with light and so on. And what they proved is you can get like a one quantum of energy, a unit of energy, which is light, going into an atom, and the atom raises its energy level by that quantum, by that unit of energy that entered it. And then eventually what happens is it collapses down to its stable state, which is its balanced state, and a quantum, one unit of energy, radiates outward. So here you have light changing the physical reality by entering into it. And, we see it. It's like, if you look at like railway lines during the day, on an extremely hot day, they have this tiny, tiny, like almost close the gap on an extremely hot summer's day. But when it gets like into freezing cold winter or whatever, there's this bigger and bigger gap between these lengths of steel. And so there's this expansion and contraction happening all the time. It's like the steel is breathing, it's like it as the temperatures of the day change. And scientists had to, I mean, the railway line makers had to make that a case of having these expansion gaps over a certain unit or length of track. Because if they didn't, the actual tracks would eventually bend and warp, and they wouldn't be able to keep the tracks straight. So they had to have expansion joints because the amount of expansion, although small, of a maybe like 300 or 400 meters, is like 1 unit of track. Um, I'm not sure exactly how much it is. It could be 100 meters or whatever. But they have to have those gaps. And if you take that little bit and you had it over like 1,000 miles of track, can you imagine? You now have to add that amount 1,000 times into these tracks. The tracks were just like, you know, and so the trains wouldn't be able to run. And then, of course, you think of the Earth. Um, we just went up to Maritzburg, and a lot of the roads are made with cement blocks. But between these cement blocks is like rubber and expansion gaps. So you have this duck, 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 duck. And it's uncomfortable, but if they don't have those expansion gaps between the actual cement blocks, what happens is the expansion of these huge blocks of cement over an extended distance, they break up and they crack and they self-destruct. And the thing is if it's on bridges, they have big gaps on bridges as well. And the reason is can you imagine if you have this huge bridge over this large sort of you know expanse of water, and that expansion happened, the whole bridge would like bend and buckle and collapse and break and self-destruct. So we think that we're living in this perfectly stable world, all right? But it's not. It's happening. It's changing. It's flexing. You know, it's absorbing light and radiating light out. It's not a thing. It's a living being. It's happening. We think of as life as things that are moving and changing. When you know everything is doing that as the temperature and the heat and the light and the and the cold and the winds and everything is happening. There is this dynamic nature to our world, other than life that we think of as life. The actual planet itself is living. It's breathing. The cycles of all of the flows of airs and the cycles of the currents flowing from hot from cold to hot. There's this continuous process happening. So like in Cape Town on the west coast, we have this upwelling from the South Pole of cold water, like freezing cold. Well, it's actually about 10 degrees most of the time, but it's upwelling from the Antarctic. And then all of the hot waters from Mozambique and all of that are all going down the current, down the coast. And sort of, so there is this constant ebbing and flowing and recycling of temperature and water and um, it's this magnificent, dynamic ecosystem, living planet happening, and then life happening at much faster rates that's more observable by us, actually happening. But most of us, if we aren't out there living, we don't see it happening. We don't know it's happening. So, hi, Lorna.
Hello. Hi,
Hey, how's it
everybody.
going?
Just a little bit here. Okay.
Okay, so Alex, or Lorna, any one of you want to talk about that? Alex, are you
I
busy? Lorna,
I
carry
did
on.
well. I did not join early, so I don't have the contents. I just the reason I joined is because I want to do something for your birthday
Okay.
because your birthday, I'm babysitting. If you allow me, this would take
Go ahead.
just a second. Oh wait, wait, let me put this really quick here. Okay, I have this candle for you and a aloe vera leaf, not on a cake.
All right, nice.
So happy birthday to you.
Oh, thank you. That's
So
wonderful.
I
Appreciate it.
blow for you.
All right, there you
Make a
go.
wish. Make a wish. Make a wish.
All right. Wish for a happy, healthy, sustainable future. It's the magical world
Except
that we can dream of.
yes.
Yes. There we go. That's magical. Yeah, Kurt was on earlier on, and then he said he's got something that he has to deal with, and then he dropped off, and we haven't heard from him since. Alex is very busy at the moment because his son's just come back from his father's place, so I'm pretty much just talking to the universe out here. So I'm
No, not at
happy.
all. I'm here, I'm listening.
So, what do you think of all of those ideas, Alex?
Oh, absolutely. I've got nothing to comment per se, but yes, no, absolutely. I'm fully with you there.
It's like we live in this dynamic, incredible world, and people, because of our schooling and because of like the objective way of looking at our world and thinking of it as things, it's like this talking about those logs that were burning last night, and we were just in what they on a piece of land called Mondi is the one of the big corporations in South Africa that grows paper plantations, which is, I mean, tree plantations. And so we were in the middle of this farm, and it was magnificent, and there were trees all around us. But then you're driving along the road, and reality strikes home, and like there's all of these newly felled logs from trees, like just in these huge big piles of logs. So and then of course those logs go to make paper and all the things that we consume in everyday life, and but we don't think about it. So here we have monoculture tree farming, where ecosystems in their most biodiverse forms have such variety and complexity, and it's like a family, it's relationships, and the roots and the mother plant looking after the baby plants, and the fungus or the mycelium underneath the ground, connecting and sharing nutrients, and there is this incredible like family, all right, of relationships happening, and and that's not just in the trees, but all of the microorganisms and the birds and everything has a part to play in this dynamic growth of this family, this loving family of life. And here it's been turned into, okay, we need this particular pole size, so we're going to grow this particular plant for those poles so that we can put up telephone poles around the country, or we can supply for that need. It's lost its compassion. It's what seemed to be lovely and incredible green and growth on the surface was just a production facility. Money was determining the existence of life. And oh my gosh, that's just so, it's so wrong, And so, of course, when you have all of this chopping down of these trees to make the planks or the tables or the chairs or the paper or whatever it is, whatever the product is that they're producing with these forests, um, you take away from the life of a tree. I mean, a tree is a living being. It's just like you just went and chopped somebody's legs off, and now you're turning them into meat. It's like you're now creating things out of this living being. It's like a tree is this incredibly beautiful, amazing, living life form. And here we are turning it into things and quantity and mass and objectifying it. It's like, where did we lose our compassion? Where did we lose our love for like the most beautiful beings on our planet that give us life and sustain our lives, like give us the oxygen we breathe, and increase rainfall and do everything that they do. They're like these magnificent creatures. So it's it's like we need to relearn our love rebuild our relationships with the trees, become part of the loving family and community of life on this planet. And if we don't do that, if we keep on doing what we're doing, basically we're killing our brothers and sisters. I mean, trees it's fascinating. Here's a concept, it's like on many species of trees, there's like the trunk, the stem, and then there's like the main branches that come out. And it works in a number of seven, it's like the trunk, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Or your nails, you might consider 8. And then if you go in the other direction from our trunk, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the bones in our body. And then you like, oh my gosh, there is this like number relationship. And in many trees, it's the identical relationship. You go from the trunk and you go out in their root systems and in the number of subsidiary branches on the actual branches are same. So there is this code, this pattern, which is the same or similar between us and the trees. So there is this direct relationship. We are family, and we just don't see it. We are similar patterns, and we come from similar origins. At some stage, the branch of life bent out, and we went in a slightly different direction and became living humans. And at some stage, the branch of life became, dogs and cats or whatever it was. So we're all related to this one family of life on this planet, but we've objectified ourselves like, here's Dennis, let's name him, call him a thing. But Dennis is not a thing. I'm changing right now as I'm speaking to you. Maybe the little hair follicles falling off, or the sound that's coming out of my mouth is changing. The thoughts I'm having are like all synapses connecting and happening. I'm not a thing. You can't call me Dennis. I'm this incredible process of life that's happening. And it's not just me as a separate thing. It's like, what living thing did I eat today that gave me the way I feel and whatever, to be able to be doing what I'm doing? So, and what air did I breathe, and what water did I drink? And it's like this incredible dynamic process where nature is happening to us and we are happening to nature. It's like this symphony, this beautiful song that's happening, this magical music. And the moment you simplify it and you generalize and you compartmentalize and you disintegrate, you lose the beauty of life, that picture, that magic that's happening. That's where I'm at. Anyone want to talk?
Yeah.
Lorna?
Now you get me excited. Because I really enjoy where I live, the outside.
Yeah.
So many birds. I have a lot of birds too. And they're such a companion,
Yeah.
such a companion for me.
Oh, yes.
So many different levels. In fact, I'm looking right now through my window, this beautiful old tree. There's a lot of old trees. And if I have some music, well, this is me, right? I just look at it and it's just starting to wave according to the music. Oh, whatever that is, but it's so beautiful that, we can find each other, and that energy path, whatever that is, and it just everything goes along with the music. That's one thing. The other thing, at 6 p.m. around now, there's I don't know the name of the birds, okay, but there's a lot of birds. Like around 6, they're like maybe like 100, 200, somewhere around there, that they come and do the show by the lake. They do the show and they just show themselves, and they're Then they go to the top of the buildings, wait, and they align themselves like a guards, symmetrically aligned. They stay there like for maybe 5 minutes, and the next thing they go to one of the buildings that they have. I don't know the name of the trees that are shorter, and that is when they go to sleep. But they usually people here don't like the noise. Well, I think it's a noise. I think it's a chanting, because it's very very loud. So I go up purposely. I go at that time, you know, to see how they choose their trees, and they so quickly they get boom into the trees, like it's their bedroom, until everything gets quiet. That lasts like maybe 15 minutes or 20 to choose trees, because there's so many. So that is like a amazing feeling. And there's always a message that I get, when I'm exposed to nature that relates to me. I mean, I allow, I guess I got used to allow that to happen. So I just gotta go see if I have some doubts or questions. I just go outside, and the trees have an answer. It's beautiful.
That's an incredible thing. It's like if you're open and you focus your intent on what it is that you want to know or feel or experience, it's amazing how it'll come to you. And um, it's like tuning in on a radio with the circular dial, analog dial, and shh. Oh, and yeah, we have good day South Africa, and then and so going into those environments and those situations that you get into that beautiful, relaxed Zen state and you feel connected to nature, you're like tuning in. That's all you're doing. You're just like, and I'm tuned into that, to whatever it is that I need to know or want to know, or what nature has to offer me at this point in terms of guidance, in terms of wisdom, and it'll come in because you opened the door, you tuned in. It's and all those sounds, I refer to them as the sounds of the forest. To me, that's like the magic of life. Underlying life is a symphony of sound and vibrations and movement that's happening, and we're in the symphony. And when we're in alignment with the symphony, everything happens magically. It's just like, yay, life is so incredible. And then we get out of alignment and it's like, oh, life is so horrible. And then we come back in and it's like, yay, life is so great. So yeah, well, that's it. We've just blown through an hour. You know that. It's so you're welcome to say anything or whatever. But
I'm very thankful, even though this few minutes I'm here, I always live with something really special that takes me throughout my day. And usually I wouldn't been able to hold that long, for so long meetings, like for, I say, this has been my platform for a lot of things,
that's
a lot of
wonderful.
things. Yes, I'm very grateful.
I appreciate that.
And for
That's
you
wonderful.
too, Alex, you're somewhere there.
I
Alex,
am. Hi.
Hi.
so anything
So
to
thank
contribute,
you.
Alex?
No, not at this time.
All right. So what we'll do is we will call the meeting to an end, and yeah. So yeah, Lorna, what it really is about your perspective. It's like, do you choose to see the magic of life, or do you choose to get, the thing is I do choose to look at life and not to be naive, and to see our world really as it is, and then to understand why. um, Unless you have the context of both, you will never truly understand what's happening in our world and be able to do something about it. So I mean, I'm looking at what's wrong with science, but there are so many incredibly good things that are happening with science. Um, but it's important to know the limitations of our tools, and to see where the inadequacies are and how to change them. So I think this journey is so, so, so important, you know. All right. So yes, thank you very much. It was wonderful having you on all online. And so we'll call it a day. Thank you so much for the birthday gift, Lorna. I loved your song on the WhatsApp. That was beautiful. And then your candle and the aloe. That was beautiful as well. You made my day.
You deserve more than that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye then.
Okay, bye,
Have a great
sweetheart. Bye,
day.
Alex.
Bye bye.
Bye, guys.
Have a good
Bye.
evening, Alex.